What's up, guys? Loving the coup here, and I'm going to watch the Democratic debate that came on PBS last night, and I missed it. I thought it was supposed to come on tonight, but I was wrong. I don't really feel like doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to keep it consistent, and I'm going to critique it. So let's just get right into it.
Good evening and welcome to the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic Presidential Debate.
Going to try the video a little differently,
University in Los Angeles,
with me in the small
California.
box
I'm Judy Woodruff.
and them
And
in the big box.
tonight, thank you. I'm joined tonight by my fellow moderators, Politico Chief Political Correspondent Tim Alberto.
I'll also pause the video
PBS NewsHour Senior
a lot of the
National
time when other people are
Correspondent
speaking,
Amna Navaz.
but I might not do it the whole time.
PBS NewsHour White House correspondent
Just 'cause this is
Yamiche
gonna take a while.
Alcindor. And now, please greet tonight's candidates. They are businessman Andrew Yang, South Bend,
Some faces aren't there
Indiana Mayor
tonight.
Pete Buttigieg, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, former Vice President Joe Biden, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders,
The Socialist,
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, and businessman Tom Steyer.
the billionaire that wants to tax other billionaires.
Welcome to all, and we will be right back to begin the debate.
Oh gosh.
Look what's happening to the American workers. They're being stifled. It has to end.
We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people.
They want what it takes to be part of America's middle class.
Okay, well,
Everyone deserves
on
a
this
living
part
wage in this
of the video now is when I'm going to start actually seriously critiquing what they're saying and listening.
The people are tired of the extremes in our politics. They've got a home with me.
Again, I don't feel like doing this because they just say the same things over and over again, and I know it's just going to be impeachment stuff for a while, probably, because that just happened. But let's just power through it.
This is the PBS
Power
NewsHour Politico
through it.
Democratic Debate. Now live from Los
Power
Angeles,
through it.
Judy
Okay.
Woodruff.
Welcome back. A quick reminder of the rules for this debate. Each candidate has 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer direct questions from the moderators, and 45 seconds to answer rebuttal and follow-up questions. Tonight's podium order on the stage was determined by an average of recent polls. And let's begin.
Let's go.
To the candidates. Last night at this hour, the House of Representatives voted for only the third time in American history to impeach a president.
Here we go.
Every one of you.
Why start the debate any differently than all the other ones? Let's talk about why we hate Trump and what bogus charges we can bring up on him.
Was in favor of this action. But unlike 1974 and
Of course, they were all in favor of this action. It's been in several of the other debates. Okay, I'm going to try not to pause it as much.
President Nixon,
And we just started.
Congressional Democrats have so
Oh my
far not
gosh.
convinced a strong majority of Americans to support impeachment of President Trump. Why do you think that is, and what can you say or do differently in the coming weeks to persuade more Americans that this is the right thing to do?
I can tell you why the majority of Americans don't agree with it. Because the investigations that went underway in this whole impeachment process concluded that there wasn't any evidence to convict. I mean, how many times does this have to keep getting said about Trump? Look, I don't agree with the man on everything, but you have to have actual evidence to convict someone of a crime. And I left a link about that from Steven Crowder's channel on my last video, explaining why the whole impeachment thing is just nonsense, because there's no evidence for anything. So check out my November debate video and look in the description of that video. Okay.
I want to ask all of you to respond, but to begin with Vice President Biden.
Well, you know, Judy, it was a constitutional necessity for the House to act as it did. And, Trump's response to suggest that only half of the American people want to see him thrown out of office now, I find is dumbing down the presidency beyond what I even thought he would do. Is any wonder that if you look at the international polling that's been done, that the Chinese leader is rated above the American president, or that Vladimir Putin congratulated him, saying stand fast, and in fact, it was a mistake to impeach him. We need to restore the integrity of the presidency, of the office of the presidency. And it's about time we get that underway. My job, and I think the job of all of us up here, is to, in fact, well, that's not true. Some are going to be actually voting in the Senate. But my job is to just go out and make the case why he doesn't deserve to be president of the United States for another 4 years.
But everyone
Senator
up there
Sanders,
does.
why do you think more people
Despite
are
this
not in
hell-bent
support of
pursuit
impeachment, and what else can you do?
Well, Judy,
to incriminate someone that you don't have any proof of him doing anything wrong. But these are the people that should lead the country. Okay.
what I would say is that we have a president who is a pathological liar.
Says the socialist who wants to steal your stuff.
We have a president who is running the most corrupt administration in the modern history of this country.
That's also not true. Again, says the socialist that wants to steal your money, and who also said that a 90% income tax isn't that bad. Says the guy that says we need to fight climate change and save the planet by population control using abortion. But Trump's the most corrupt guy around. Literally everybody on this stage would be worse than Trump. Everybody. All of them. And what Bernie Sanders, when he talks about climate change, what he's proposing, more abortion to fight climate change, to decrease the human population, that's literally the ideology of Thanos. Like, Bernie Sanders is the weak old man version of Thanos. Obama, pro-choice. Hillary Clinton, radically pro-choice. Bill Clinton, pro-choice. But Trump's the worst president in modern history. Okay.
And we have a president who is a fraud, because during his campaign, he told working people one thing, and he ended up doing something else. I believe, and I will personally,
I'm not going to keep pausing, because he's just going to keep saying stuff that I disagree with.
Is making the case that we have a president who has sold out the working families of this country, who wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid after he promised he would not do that, and who has documentedly lied thousands of times since he is president. And the case to be made is, yeah, certainly I disagree with Trump on virtually all of his policies. But what conservatives, I think, understand is that we cannot have a president with that temperament who is dishonoring the presidency of the United States.
Senator Warren, why do
You don't speak for conservatives, Bernie. You don't. A lot of us are critical of Trump, me being one of them. And a lot of conservatives love Trump. And I'll be honest, I like a lot of what he's done, because a lot of it's biblical. Not all of it is. There's a good bit that is. You don't speak for conservatives.
you think?
Socialist.
Why do you think more Americans don't agree that this is the right thing to do, and what more can you say?
So
I see this as a constitutional moment. Last night, the president
Well, if
was
it isn't
impeached,
Pocahontas.
and everyone now in the Senate who's taken a constitutional oath to uphold our Constitution, and that doesn't mean loyalty to an individual. It doesn't mean loyalty to a political party.
Like due
It
process,
means loyalty to
impeachment,
our country. And
irony.
that vote will play out over the next several weeks. But the way I see this is we've now seen the impact of corruption, and that's what's clearly on the stage in 2020, is how we are going to run.
I agree. Corruption is on the stage in 2020. Corruption's on the stage on PBS last night, not tonight, but okay.
Against the most corrupt president in living history. You know, this president has made corruption originally his argument that he would drain the swamp. And yet he came to Washington, broke that promise, and has done everything he can for the wealthy and the well-connected, from tax breaks to ambassadorships. We have to
Because tax breaks
this against him.
are bad.
That means we need a candidate for president who can draw the sharpest distinction between the corruption of the Trump administration and a Democrat who is willing to get out and fight, not for the wealthy and well-connected, but to fight for everyone else. That's why I'm in this race.
What about babies?
Senator Klobuchar.
Oh, well, I guess they're fair game.
Senator Klobuchar, what argument can you make to persuade more Americans this is the right thing?
Let me make the case to the American people. As a wise judge said, the president is not king in America. The law is king. And what James Madison
Due
once
process
said when he was
is also a law.
speaking out at the Constitutional Convention, and by the way, I think he's a pretty good size for a president. He was 5'4". And what he said the reason that we have these impeachment articles in the Constitution, that the provisions are in there, is because he feared
Kinda
that a
tired,
president
so-
would betray the trust of the American people for a foreign power. That is what happened here. Watergate, this is a global Watergate. In the case of Watergate, a paranoid president facing election looked for dirt on a political opponent. He did it by getting people to break in. This president did it by calling a foreign leader to look for dirt on a political opponent. And I would make this case. As we face this trial in
But
the
with
Senate,
Watergate,
if the
there
president
was
claims
evidence.
He is so innocent, then why doesn't he have all the president's men testify? Richard Nixon had his top people testify. We should be hearing from Mulvaney, who is the one, under oath, witnesses have said that Mulvaney is the one that said, okay, we're going to withhold this aid to a fledgling democracy to get dirt on a political opponent. We should hear from Bolton, who told his own staff to go see a lawyer after they met with the president. That is the case. If President Trump thinks that he should not be impeached, he should be not scared to put forward his own witnesses.
Mayor Buttigieg. Mayor Buttigieg,
But there's no
what
evidence.
additional argument can you make?
It's irrelevant.
At the end of the day, this
Doesn't have
is
anything to
beyond
prove.
public opinion. This is beyond polls. This is beyond politics. The president left the House with no choice. And I think a lot of us are watching this process, watching Washington go through the motions, and not expecting much but a foregone conclusion when it gets to the Senate. But we cannot give in to that sense of helplessness,
Buttigieg.
because that's what they want. They want us
It's
to
terrible.
be taken in by that cynicism to where we give up on the process altogether. Meanwhile, their allies are laughing all the way to the bank as we see policies that let giant corporations, some of which made billions in profits, pay not just zero, but as we've recently learned, negative taxes, all while they block policies that would actually boost wages for working Americans.
This is coming from the guy in the party that wants to raise
us.
taxes.
No matter what happens in the Senate, it is up to us in 2020. This is our chance to refuse to be taken in by the helplessness, to refuse and reject the cynicism. That is what this presidential election is about. It is what my campaign
how long?
is
How
about.
much longer?
Our opportunity in 2020, no matter what happens in Washington, as a country, to change the course of this nation for the better.
Mr. Yang, what more?
I'm over here.
Mr. Yang, what more can you say
Judy.
to the American people?
Judy,
I'm sorry, Mr. Steyer. I'm sorry.
Well, let me remind everyone that I'm the person who started the need to impeach movement.
He just
over
clapped
2
at
years
her.
ago. Because Because I believe
Dude, that was
what
so
counts here
rude.
is actually the American people's opinion. Over 8.5 million signed that petition and
Hey, over
dragged
here.
Washington into the idea that actually the most corrupt president in American history, not a question of political expediency, it's not a question of political tactics, it's a question of right and wrong. So now when we look
Like,
what's going on, I
voting
actually
to
agree with
impeach
Senator
someone
Klobuchar. The question here is,
with no
if
evidence?
we want the American
Steyer?
people to understand what's going on, we need to have the administration officials testify on TV so we can judge. The court that counts here is the court of public opinion. The American people deserve to see the truth of these administration officials testifying under oath so we can make up our mind. If we want Republican senators to do the right thing, we need their constituents to see the truth on TV and tell them, get rid of this guy or we'll get rid of you. That's what I believe in. I'm a believer in the grassroots as an outsider, getting the American people's voice to count. That's who I trust, and that's who I trust now.
Mr. Yang.
It's clear why Americans can't agree on impeachment. We're getting our news from different sources, and it's making it hard for us even to agree on basic facts. Congressional approval rating last I checked was something like 17%, and Americans don't trust the media networks to tell them the truth. The media networks didn't do us any favors by missing the reason why Donald Trump became our president in the first place. If you turn on cable network news today, you would think he's our president because of some combination of Russia, racism, Facebook, Hillary Clinton, and emails all mixed together. But Americans around the country know different. We blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri. I just left Iowa. We blasted 40,000 manufacturing jobs there. The more we act like Donald Trump is the cause of all of our problems, the more Americans lose trust that we can actually see what's going on in our communities and solve those problems. What we have to do is we have to stop being obsessed over impeachment, which unfortunately strikes many Americans like a ball game where you know what the score is going to be, and start actually digging in and solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. We have to take every opportunity to present a new positive vision for the country, a new way forward to help beat him in 2020, because make no mistake, he'll be there at the ballot box for us to defeat.
Thank you, Mr. Yang.
Okay, so that was kind of pointless, but
Let's turn now to
whatever.
an issue that is on the minds of all Americans, and that is the economy. Senator Sanders, today the House of Representatives voted for...
I'm sorry. I just think it's hilarious that they picked the one bold professing socialist for the first economy question. Now, let's think of something that all Americans are concerned about, the economy. Mr. Sanders, socialist, wants to tax people to death, wants to seize businesses. Let's start with you. What do you think, sir? Let's hear him.
For a new bipartisan trade agreement among the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It was supported by union-friendly leaders like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and big labor groups like the AFL-CIO.
Well, that's
They say
promising.
it is going to be a big job creator. Senator, my question is, will you support this deal? And if not, why not?
Judy, you're talking to somebody who, unlike some of my colleagues here, voted against NAFTA, voted against PNCR with China, two agreements that cost us over 4 million decent-paying jobs. Now, I don't agree with your statement that people think this is going to be a great job creator. This is a modest improvement over what we have right now. It would allow, hopefully, Mexican workers to organize into unions, independent unions, and be able to negotiate decent contracts. But at the end of the day, in my view, it is not going to stop outsourcing. It is not going to stop corporations from moving to Mexico, where manufacturing workers make less than $2 an hour. What we need is a trade policy that stands up for workers, stands up for farmers, and by the way, the word climate change, to the best of my knowledge,
Oh my
is not
gosh.
discussed in this new NAFTA agreement at all. which is an outrage. So no, I will not be voting for this agreement, although it makes some modest improvements.
Senator Klobuchar.
Climate change wasn't even in the question.
I'll go with my friend Sherrod Brown, who has
Holy
voted
crap.
against every trade agreement that's come in front of him.
I don't get. I mean, he's not the only one that does it, but Bernie finds a way to put climate change in everything. He's done it every debate so far. Hey, Bernie, what do you think about tariffs? What do you think about taxes? What do you think about farmers and businesses? Well, climate change. Bernie, we're not talking about climate change. Well, climate change. It's amazing. It's amazing how he works that in every answer. The question had nothing to do with climate change at all.
And he's voting for this, and I am too. And the reason I am voting for it is that I believe that we have a change with this agreement. I would not have voted for the agreement that President Trump put forward.
Checking
but
my
we've got
texts.
better labor standards, better
More interesting
environmental
than the debate.
standards, and a better deal when it comes to the pharmaceutical provision, which I also opposed. 95% of our customers are outside of our borders, and we have to make sure that we have trade agreements that are more fair, because if we can encourage work made in America, every time you hold something in your hand that says made in America, it is the ingenuity of our workers. It is the quality of a product. It is equality of our workers, and it is the hopes and dreams of the American people. I think this agreement,
Awesome.
while
Let's
Senator
not tax
Sanders is
them.
correct, there are some issues with it, is much better than the one originally proposed. And for those farmers in the Midwest, and for those people that have been hurt by the fact that we will not have a trade segment with Mexico and with Canada and the United States, I think that this is a much better deal.
All right, we can pull some of your, I see some other hands up. I want to move to the next question, and you can bring in, I think, your points with this. But this one I'm going to initially address to Vice President Biden, and that is the overall U.S. economy right
Creepy
now
leg
looks
hair man.
strong. The unemployment rate is at historic lows. Unemployment among African Americans is down. The markets are booming. Wages,
Seriously, go
while
look up.
not growing as much as many would.
Go look up Joe Biden's recent speech where he talks about his leg hair in the swimming pool. He's a weird guy.
Like, they're still doing about as well as they were in the Obama-Biden era. My question to you, Mr. Vice President, is what is your argument for a voter watching this debate tonight who may not like everything President Trump does, but they really like this economy and they don't know why they should make a change?
Well, I don't think they really do like the economy. Go back and talk to the old.
Okay, unemployment is at an all-time low. It's at an all-time low. I mean, I really don't understand. Like, unemployment is literally statistically at an all-time low right now. The economy is doing great. Much better than it's done in a long time. It's actually pretty amazing. I don't get it. I don't understand how you can have someone like Trump, who is not a consistent conservative. I don't think he's conservative. But someone who wants to lower taxes, someone who wants to actually fight for businesses, even wealthy businesses. Ooh. I don't understand the disagreement there, and I don't understand how a group of people that are either implicitly or explicitly for socialism and high taxes and government being involved in businesses or even seizing businesses are supposed to solve the economy problem. Trump's doing good with that. These guys have always sucked at it. Don't get it. They don't have solutions. They're just complaining about the president.
In the middle-class neighborhood you grew up in. The middle class is getting killed. The middle class is getting crushed. And the working class has no way up as a consequence of that. You have...
Sounds like socialism.
Farmers in the Midwest, 40% of them couldn't pay their bills last year. You have most Americans
Stop taxing
that
them.
received a bill for $400 or more, they'd have to sell something or borrow the money. The middle class is behind the eight ball. We have to make sure that they have an even shot. We have to eliminate
Stop
significant
taxing
number of
them.
these god-awful tax cuts that were given to the very wealthy. We have to
That's unbelievable. Like they're the ones who are making the jobs. They're the ones that are employing people. I mean, do you like your iPhone and laptop? Do you like buying things on Amazon? Do you like your TV? Do you like your big stores like Best Buy? I mean, good grief. These are the people that are giving people jobs and are making the products that we all use every day. And he's sitting here complaining about the economy for all these workers, but he's complaining about tax breaks to people who work for these companies. Tax breaks are good. Tax cuts are good. Especially for the people that are making the jobs for the rest of us in the nation. This is easy math. And I'm not, and I didn't get, I didn't get to calculus, anything like that. But this is easy math. Anyone can do this. Oh, hold up. Wrong one. There we go.
invest in education. We have to invest in healthcare. We have to invest in those things that make a difference in the lives of middle-class people so they can maintain their standard of living. That's
okay. Taxing the middle class so that people can have government-run healthcare and education is literally why the middle class doesn't have as much money as it should. Because you're taxing them for stupid reasons. Actually, I take that back. You're taxing them, which is a stupid thing to do. Let them keep their paycheck. Easy. Simple. The government should not be involved in healthcare or education. It's not their freaking job. It's never been their job.
That's not being done. And the idea that we're growing...
Not biblically,
we're
not constitutionally,
growing. The
nothing.
Wealthy, very wealthy are growing. Ordinary people are not growing. They are not happy with where they are, and that's why we must change this presidency now.
Mayor Buttigieg, is that your assessment?
I'm happy with my job. Lots of middle class people feel the same way. I can tell you what I'm unhappy about. Income tax coming out. Let's end that. Deregulate businesses and let everyone keep their freaking paycheck. Then people have more money. Then the economy's better. Oh my gosh, this is so easy. Seriously, these people will blame everything else except for the taxing people to death thing. The stealing people's money part. Like their solution to people not having as much money as they should is to blame everything else and tax them even more when the taxing them is the problem. None of these are gray areas. These are really easy black and white areas to understand. Like, there's nothing hard about this.
Yes, where I live, folks aren't measuring the economy by how the Dow Jones is looking. Measuring the economy by how they're doing.
Buttigieg,
Booty
gay,
your kitchen table.
butt gay,
You find that even if
butt
your wages
gig,
have gone
booty
up,
gig,
it's not nearly going as fast as the cost
Buttigieg,
of health
butt
and
jig,
housing. This economy is not working for most of
Buttigieg.
us.
There we
For
go.
the middle
Got
class, and I know you're only ever supposed to say middle class and not poor in politics, but we've got to talk about poverty in this country. There is not one county in the United States of America where someone working full-time at the minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. In most places,
Let them keep their paycheck. Then they can afford things easier. Let them keep it. Stop giving their money away to people who can't pay their medical bills or to people who are going to college and want a better education. Let them keep the money that they earn and stop forcefully taking it and giving it to someone else. There's a solution. It's just hilarious hearing this.
this is not even a 1-bedroom apartment. The biggest problem in our economy is simple. People
Taxes.
are not getting paid enough. That is not the result of some mysterious cosmic force. It's the result of bad policy, and we've got to change it by raising wages and empowering workers.
Workers can empower themselves. They don't need the government to do that for them. Just work hard. Also, raising wages is not your job. That should be the job of the business owner. It's not up to the government to decide what someone should pay their workers. It's up to the owner of that business what they should decide to pay their workers. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Yang.
GDP and corporate profits are at record highs in America today. Also at record highs, depression, financial insecurity, student loan debt.
Not my problem.
Suicides and drug overdoses. It has gotten so bad that our life expectancy as
Student debt is not my problem.
The last 3 years because
I have my own
suicides and
student
drug
debt.
overdoses have overtaken vehicle deaths for the first time in American history. The fact is, this unemployment rate and GDP have very little relationship with people's lived experience on the ground. If you're a recent college graduate, you have a 40% chance of doing a job that doesn't require a college degree. That doesn't show up in the headline unemployment rate, nor does all of the families that are working 2 or 3 jobs to get by.
Senator Warren, you have your hand up.
I do.
And I have a question for you.
Well, I want to ask
Go ahead.
this question.
Go ahead.
Because here's the problem. I'm proud to stand on a stage with Democrats who understand that a rising GDP, rising corporate profits is not being felt by millions of families across this country. I'm proud to stand on a stage with people who see that America's middle class is being hollowed out and that working families and poor people are being left behind. What we need to talk about, though, is why that has happened.
Taxes.
And the answer
High
is
taxes.
we've got a government that works great for those with money and doesn't work for much of anyone else. We have a government that works great for giant drug companies, just not for someone trying to fill a prescription.
Again, it's not the government's job to provide health care. Let businesses do that. They're the experts. Not Elizabeth Warren. Let people keep their freaking money. That's the answer.
Works great for people who want to make money at private prisons and private detention centers at our border, just not for the people whose lives are torn apart. Works great for
It's an interesting choice of words, whose lives are torn apart. Millions of babies have been torn apart in the womb. She's totally okay with that. But she cares about people. No, she doesn't.
giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, but not for the rest of us who see climate change
business.
bearing down upon us. And when you see
Climate change
a
doesn't
government
exist.
that works great for the wealthy and the well-connected and for no one else, that is
In the sense that they're
corruption,
saying it.
pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is.
Because we have to bring climate change into every topic.
I want Senator Sanders, if you would, a brief response, and then I have another question.
Look, here's the response. Trump goes around saying the economy is doing great. You know what? Real inflation accounted for wages went up last year? 1.1%. That ain't great. Tonight, while 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 500,000 Americans, including 30,000 veterans, are sleeping out on the streets. Today in America, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. More
You want to
income and
kill
wealth inequality
kids in poverty,
since
Bernie.
the 1920s. We need an
His solution to climate change is to kill kids in poverty. Oh my gosh. Like, it's literally his climate change solution plan. And here he is complaining about kids suffering in poverty. You can't make this up.
economy that works for working
Oh my
families,
gosh.
not just the 1%. That is what our campaign is about.
Senator Warren, I have a question for you.
What the 1%
Every
does affects the
candidate
rest
on
of
the
us.
stage has proposed
Let's treat
tax
them good.
increases on the wealthy. But you have especially ambitious plans that, apart from health care, would hike taxes an additional $8 trillion over the decade. the biggest tax increase since World War II. How do you answer top economists who say taxes of this magnitude would stifle growth and investment?
Oh, they're just wrong.
Oh, they're just wrong. High taxes aren't a problem. Let's just hear it. Why are they cheering that? High taxes are the... Look, income tax is like over 30% right now for middle class people. Like, I mean, if you work a full week, you're kind of working a day for free sometimes because all of that's just being taxed out of your paycheck to pay for other people that you didn't volunteer to pay for. So on top of that, more high taxes, insanely higher taxes, which would take more money out of the pockets of workers, and someone critiques Warren and says, yeah, but then people have less money. Well, you're just wrong. That's absurd. And I don't even understand the thinking process here. Oh, maybe, well, you're not meant to understand it, I guess. You're just wrong. More taxes equals worse economy because it's less money people are getting to keep. The more you steal from someone's pocket, the less money they have and the worse off they're going to be. This is easy. And they're cheering.
Let's start with a wealth tax.
Do they know why they're cheering?
A 2-cent tax on the great fortunes in this country, $50 million and above. For 2 cents, what can we do? We can invest in the rest of America. We can provide universal child care, early childhood education for every baby in this country aged 0 to 5. Universal pre-K.
Because she cares about your children. Enough to have them spliced apart in the womb and murdered. Universal child care. They want your kids. They want to brainwash them young so that they can make them think exactly like they do. Universal health care, universal child care and universal child education. It's not the government's job. It does not take a village to raise a kid. Hillary is wrong. It takes 2 parents, a mom and a dad, that are married. That's a family. And that's only a family. But not according to the people on this stage.
Okay, for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old, and raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher. We can do even more for our public schools, for college graduates. We can cancel student loan debt. But think about the economic impact of that. You leave 2 cents with the billionaires.
Yeah, it would.
They're not eating
Punch it right in the
pizzas.
face.
They're not buying more cars. We invest that 2% in early childhood education and child care. That means those babies get top-notch care.
No.
It means their mamas.
She doesn't care about
finish
babies.
Their education. It means their mamas and their daddies can take on real jobs, harder jobs, longer hours.
And
we can increase productivity in this country, and we can start building this economy from the ground up. That's how we build it in small towns. That's how we build it in rural America, and that's how we build it in urban America, an economy that works not from Wall Street, but that works from Main Street.
Brief responses from Mr. Steyer and Mr. Buttigieg.
So let me say that I agree with Senator Warren in much of what she says. I've been for a wealth tax for over a year. I'm in favor of undoing all the tax breaks for rich people and big corporations that this administration
says the
has put through.
billionaire.
And in
Traitor.
addition, I've talked about equilibrating the taxes on passive investment income, which would allow us to cut taxes for 95% of Americans by 10%. But there's something else going on here that I think is really important, and that's this. We know Mr. Trump's going to run on the economy. I built a business over 30 years from scratch. We're going to have to take him on on the economy in terms of growth as well as economic justice. We're going to have to be able to talk about growth, prosperity across the board for everyone in America. My experience building a business, understanding how to make that happen means I can go toe-to-toe with Mr. Trump and take him down on the economy and expose him as a fraud and a failure. And I think that's different from the other
He's
people on
not
this
failing
stage.
at that, though.
I think we need a different, unconventional way of attacking a
He's
different,
objectively not
unconventional
failing at
president
that.
who actually went after the
Mayor.
best prepared candidate in American history and beat her.
Mayor Buttigieg.
We're also right now, I think we're being offered a false choice. You either have to go all the way to the extreme or it's business as usual. Yes, we must deliver big ideas. And yes, taxes on wealthy individuals and on corporations are going to have to go up. We can also be smart about the promises we're making. Make sure they're promises that we can keep without the kind of taxation that economists tell
Be
us
smart
could
or
hurt
more
the economy.
taxes. You
It's
can't
why,
have
for
both.
example, I propose that we make college free for 80% of Americans, but it doesn't have to be free for the top. If you're in that top 10%,
That's
how about
evil.
you pay your own tuition and we save those dollars for something else that we could spend them on? that would
Class
make a big
warfare
difference.
much? And not only that, free for other people and not free for these people. You know what that means? That means that bottom 80, I think it's 80% that he said, gets to go to college for free at the expense of the top 20% through taxation, and those top 20% have to pay for their own college and for their kids' college. So not only do you have that 20% paying for their own college and schooling and all those things, but they're being taxed to death to pay for the rest of the country's college. But it's free. That's just socialism. Redistributing wealth based on economic class. It's class warfare, and it's stealing. I think it's Exodus 30. I've mentioned it in some of my other videos. I'm pretty sure it's chapter 30. But in the book of Exodus, when it talks about taxes in Israel, it actually says, the rich shall not pay more and the poor shall not pay less. Look it up. Taxing people more or taxing or less based on how much money they have is unbiblical and wicked. It's evil. It's wrong. Hence why socialism is bad. But redistributing wealth to make college free, it's not free. And I just don't, like, you're screwing so many people over by doing that, and I can't believe people cheer for this.
Whether it's infrastructure, childcare, housing, health, on issue after issue, we've got to break out of the Washington mindset that measures the bigness of an idea by how many trillions of dollars it adds to the budget, or the boldness of an idea by how many fellow Americans it can antagonize.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back in 2 minutes with questions from my fellow moderators.
I might do some skipping in this debate. This is painful. Oof. Let's see, hold on.
Welcome back, everyone. We are here back at the break in this debate, the first of 3 breaks. This is a short one. I'm joined by, of course, our fantastic panel of analysts and journalists. And I want to first
Looks like there's
ask
like
you,
2
Stephanie
hours
Tsai
left.
and Amy Walter. We hit the 2 big topics right off the top. Impeachment, basically President Trump, how do you deal with him, and the economy. Let's start with the economy. That's the number one issue for voters here. All of these candidates want $15 an hour minimum wage, at least eventually. But what differences did we hear? Anything significant?
Well, the difference we heard was at the very end there with Pete Buttigieg saying, you know, we got to make sure that there are promises that we can keep. And going back, something we talked about before the debate began, this sense of breaking away from Elizabeth Warren by saying we can be big, we can be bold, we can have really progressive ideas. But if we look like we are measuring our boldness just in how high how much tax we are putting on Americans, how big the programs are going to be. That's just going to come back and hurt the Democratic nominee.
Stephanie Sy.
So first of all, Elizabeth Warren's answer to Judy's question, she didn't answer it directly. She just said, no, those models are wrong. There are different economic models of what impact.
What about economic doubts about your plan?
Yeah, I'm turning that down because that's boring. Yeah, business owners should be allowed to decide what their workers get paid. The idea of freedom in business, I know that's a horrifying thing, but that's the way it should be.
And we're going to go back to the stage momentarily again for the PBS NewsHour Politico
Ooh,
debate.
this has been a painfully boring debate. Is that it? We back? Nope. Okay. Well, maybe we're back.
Live from Los Angeles, the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic debate continues. Once again, Judy Woodruff.
All right, here we go.
Welcome back to the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic presidential debate. The next question is from Tim Alberta of Politico.
Thanks, Judy. Candidates, good evening. We're going to talk about climate now. Senator
Oh, good.
Many scientists say that even if the U.S. reduced its carbon footprint to zero by the year 2050, the damage will have been done. The climate change will have made certain places in the U.S. unlivable. So knowing this, would you support a new federal program to subsidize the relocation of American families and businesses away from places like Miami or Paradise, California, perhaps, Davenport, Iowa, because we know these places are going to be hit time and time again?
Well, I very much hope we're not going to have to relocate entire cities, but we will probably have to relocate some individual residents. And the problem right now is that this climate change is an existential crisis. And you are seeing it here in California with the fires that you just had. You saw it in Northern California.
So existential, we should kill kids.
And the most moving video from that to me was a 30-second video of that dad driving his little girl through the lapping fires with the neighborhood burning behind him.
Oh my gosh. Forest fires have always existed. Okay? Wildfires have always existed. Fire's real. Natural disasters have always happened. It's not climate change that's causing fires. Holy crap. Those have always existed. They've always existed. Fires can start anywhere.
Singing to her to calm her down. We cannot wait to act. There's an Ojibwe saying that great leaders make decisions not for this generation, but 7 generations from now. This president doesn't keep his decisions for 7 minutes. So what I think we need to do, get back.
Okay, everyone on this stage doesn't even make decisions that are good for current generation, for starters. We're going to talk about generations. You mean new people that come about by reproduction? These are all people that say it's okay to kill all those people. All those new people, you can splice them apart in the womb. All of them. They're not people anyway. But they're claiming they care about the next generation. You don't care about upcoming generations when you say that they should all die if the mother wants to kill it. You don't care. Climate change is also not a legitimate threat. The idea that the world could come to a catastrophic end any other way than the second coming of Jesus is heretical and fundamentally anti-Christian. The idea that it's going to get too hot The end of Genesis chapter 8 says that as long as the earth is here, so the time between the flood and the second coming of Christ, which hasn't happened yet, seed time and harvest, cold, heat, summer, winter, day and night will not cease. It's not a threat. Genesis 8 says it's not a threat. Can't be one. Lots of credible scientists today say that it is one. And it's not just creationists and Christian scientists either. It's not just those people that debate Bill Nye. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, even says climate change is not a real threat. There's no scientific evidence for it. Co-founder of Greenpeace. He does interviews with Steven Crowder, and he does videos on PragerU, their YouTube channel. Objective science says that there's no evidence for climate change. God says that there is no such thing as the threat of climate change because Scripture says it can't happen. That's just the end of the discussion. Can't happen. It's a made-up issue.
Back into the International Climate Change Agreement. I will do that on day 1. On day 2, bring back the clean power rules. On day 3, the gas mileage standards. I see the governor of California, who's been working so hard to get those done, defied every step of the way by the Trump administration, and then introduced sweeping legislation to put a price on carbon and build a fridge to the next century.
Thank you, Senator
Which means we must upgrade our buildings and our building
I'm probably going to
standards.
do some skipping. This is boring.
Would you support such a new federal program, again, to help subsidize the relocation of these families?
Look, I am hoping that we, in fact, will do what I'm suggesting, which is declare a state of emergency on day 1 of my presidency. I have made this. I believe I'm the only person here who will say unequivocally, this is my #1 priority. I know that we have to deal with this crisis. I know that we have to deal with it from the standpoint of environmental justice. I've been working on this for more than a decade. I've taken on oil companies and beaten them on environmental laws. I've pushed clean energy across this country. I've prevented pipelines, and I've prevented fossil fuel plants. But what I know is this.
Fossil fuels are 100% organic. And CO2 is not unclean. CO2 has always been in the air. It's always been in the atmosphere. In fact, without CO2, no life is possible. More CO2 means more life. More CO2 means more photosynthesis, which means more oxygen for us to breathe. All fossil fuel, coal, oil, natural gas, comes from organisms in the ground that have died. It's 100% organic. And the reason so much of our air is clean today is because devices that run on fossil fuel can actually get rid of pollution. And indoor pollution isn't even a thing anymore like it used to be because we have fossil fuel now. Using fossil fuels has literally been revolutionary in how we run as a planet, and it's literally been revolutionary in how clean everything, including air and water, is. Think of our water supply, the reason you have really clean water coming out of your faucet, all of these things are run by fossil fuel. All of it. Electricity comes from fossil fuel. Everything we use on a daily basis comes from fossil fuel. Just about everything. It's unbelievable.
Not only can we clean up the air and water in the black and brown communities where our pollution is concentrated, this is also the opportunity to create literally millions of middle-class union jobs well paid across the United States of America. Our biggest crisis is our biggest opportunity. And if we don't declare a state of emergency on day 1, I don't understand how we go to the people around the world.
There's no emergency.
To lead the coalition that has to happen and that only America can lead. Look, this is a
not real.
generational question.
It's fake.
I have a lot of
not a real
respect
threat.
for the people on this stage. I know everybody is worried about this. But for instance, I would call on Mayor Buttigieg to
Seriously, this is the
privatize
party of
higher,
Thanos.
because the people in his generation
Resources
understand
won't
that this
run
is a
out.
crisis that we have to go on right now, but it's
Thank you, Mr.
also the
Steyer.
greatest opportunity to rebuild and reinvent America.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanos
Steyer.
was
Mr.
wrong.
Judge, 45 seconds to respond.
Come on.
Well, I've made clear that this will be a topic of day one action, and this is not.
Gosh, I'm tired of listening to this guy.
I live in one of those river cities that you're talking about. Not only that, I live right by the river. My neighborhood flooded in the second of 2 once-in-a-millennium floods that we had in 2 years. Do the math on that. So I know what's at stake. And it's why I insist that we act with a carbon tax and dividend, with massive increases in renewable research.
The solution to the so-called threat of climate change is, wait for it, more taxes. It's unbelievable. They're talking about solving issues with the economy and with poor people, but in order to solve all those issues, we're going to tax people to death, which is the problem to begin with the economy, and with the climate change thing that doesn't really exist, we're going to tax people to death on that. If climate change was real, taxes aren't doing anything. And it's not, so it's even more pointless. The world can't end that way. It won't end that way, and it's obvious.
On renewable energy, energy storage, and carbon storage, but bigger than that, we have to summon the energies of the entire country to deal with this. I've seen politicians in Washington saying the right thing about climate change for as long as I've been alive. All these plans we have to get carbon neutral by 2050, and I think most or all of us have one, their impact is multiplied by 0 unless something actually gets done.
We'd like to switch.
And that is why I want to make sure that our vision for climate includes people from the auto worker down the block from me in South Bend to a farmer a few minutes away, so that they understand that we are recruiting them to be part of the solution.
Thank you, Mr.
Not
Mayor.
beating them over the head and
Thank you,
telling
Mr.
them they're
Mayor. We'd
part
like
of
to
the problem.
switch gears slightly. Vice President Biden, I'd like to ask you, 3 consecutive American presidents have enjoyed stints of explosive economic growth due to a boom in oil and natural gas production. As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because the opportunity for those workers to transition to high-paying jobs, as Tom said, is real. We're the only country in the world that's ever
Okay,
taken
skipping ahead.
Not radioactive the way uranium is. It doesn't last as long, and you can't make a weapon out of it. If we're going to innovate our way out of this, as Elizabeth is saying, then we have to have nuclear on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. The last word on climate to you, Mr. Steyer.
Look,
Okay, they're still on
the point
climate.
about nuclear power is it's not at a stage in the United States where it's competitive on price. It has a lot of risks to it in terms of disasters, and we have no ability to store the toxins that come out of it and last 100,000 years. We actually have the technology that we need. It's called wind and solar and batteries.
That's retarded,
So in fact,
man.
What we need to do,
No.
we can do. We've got to stop taking a look at this as
Okay, using windmills is not anywhere nearly as efficient as fossil fuel. It's harder. Like I don't even. That's so dumb to me. Fossil fuel is the cheapest, easiest, best energy source that we've ever had as a human race in all of human history. And it's hated by everyone on a stage of Democrats who enjoy it on a daily basis. This dude's a millionaire, and he's complaining about, a billionaire, and he's complaining about other billionaires having too much money. He's a trader, and this dude enjoys fossil fuel every single day. Everybody on this stage enjoys fossil fuel every single day. They all got there in planes, in cars, they all have cell phones, they all use toiletries, they all use electricity and heat and air conditioning and breathe clean air and drink clean water. And all of that stuff is being packaged with things that run on fossil fuel. Everything that these people do is fossil fuel, and they say they hate it. I don't buy it. They don't hate fossil fuel as much as they say. They use it every day. I use it every day. You use it every day. Everyone uses it every day. It's revolutionary. These people are idiots. I don't get it. No one's gonna go cold turkey on fossil fuel, ever.
As something that we can't do, because we can do this, and we can do it in a way that rebuilds this country on an accelerated basis.
Okay, what's next? What's next?
We have to be able to get things done. And when we can't convince them, we go out and beat them like we did in the 2018 election in red states and in purple states.
Thank you, Mr. Biden. Mr. Yang, I want to switch topics to you, Mr. Yang. A new question. The Democratic Party relies on Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters, but you are the only candidate of color on the stage tonight, and the entire field remains overwhelmingly
Well, now
white.
he is, but
What
I mean,
message
white is a
do you
color.
think this sends to voters of color?
It's both an honor and disappointment to be the lone candidate of color on the stage tonight. I miss Kamala, I miss Cory, though I think Cory will be back.
I hope not.
I grew up the son of immigrants, and I had many racial epithets used against me as a kid. But Black and Latinos have something much more powerful working against them than words. They have numbers. The average net worth of a Black household is only 10% that of a white household. For Latinos, it's 12%. If you're a Black woman, you're 320% more likely to die from complications in childbirth. These are the numbers that define race in our country. And the question is, why am I the lone candidate of color on this stage? Fewer than 5% of Americans donate to political campaigns. You know what you need to donate to political campaigns? Disposable income. The way we fix this is we take Martin Luther King's message of a guaranteed minimum income, a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for all Americans. I guarantee if we had a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month, I would not be the only candidate of color on this stage tonight.
Martin Luther King Jr. died a Republican after being shot by a Democrat. Fun fact. Martin Luther King Jr.'s living relative, Evita King, is a Republican who voted for Trump. What's her number one reason for doing so? Because she says the Democratic Party is still the party of racism and that Trump is not a racist. And her number one argument for that is the abortion issue. The Democratic Party is the party of abortion. 20 million Black babies have died because of Planned Parenthood strategically putting the majority of their facilities in areas where there's predominantly Black people living there, low-income areas. It's been that way ever since Planned Parenthood started, ever since that became a thing. And the abortion part of it has happened ever since it became legal in the United States in 1973. It's been that way the whole time. And it's amazing. Andrew Yang is standing on the stage as a supporter of abortion all the way up until birth, even partial birth, even after they're born in some instances. Knowing the Holocaust that goes on, not only with all Americans when it comes to abortion, but Black Americans. Over 20 million of the 60 million babies that have been murdered since 1973 have all been Black. Because of Planned Parenthood's racist strategy to target Black people. And why does that exist? Because Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, said that she wanted to get rid of Black people. And how did she do that? By putting the majority of her facilities in low-income areas and Black areas. And they still do that today. And this man, Andrew Yang, and everybody else on the stage, and the people of color that are no longer on the stage, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, all supporters of that. But they all claim to love minorities and minority children and people in low-income areas. No, they don't. They hate them enough to get them to kill their offspring. Who's the party of racism? Which one's the party of racism? The one that wants to actually continue murdering babies with a focus on Black babies? or the party that says, hey, you shouldn't murder babies, let's defund Planned Parenthood and get them shut down.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Sanders.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Yang, for your load of bullcrap.
What message do you think?
Answer that question, but I wanted to get back to the issue of climate change for a moment, because I do believe.
Again, every single time Bernie is asked a question, he talks about climate change. This question has nothing to do with climate change. I literally skipped ahead in the video to get past the climate topic.
This is the existential issue.
Senator, with all respect, this question is about race. Can you
Thank
answer
you.
the question as it was asked?
Thank you. But in Bernie's mind, it's the same question, because what's his solution to climate change? Aborting people in third world countries, aborting poor people, poor brown people, poor not white people. It is literally what he proposed some months back, and is still proposing, to fight the non-issue that is called climate change. In Bernie's mind, climate change has everything to do with race. But in everybody else's mind, we recognize that they're totally different topics. This man does not know how to think critically, logically, or reasonably.
Because people of color, in fact, are going to be the people suffering most if we do not deal with climate change. And by the way,
Oh my gosh! He literally proposed to kill people of color to fight climate change. How is no one seeing this? Who is not seeing this? How the hell does this get past people? This is unbelievable.
we have an obligation up here, if there are not any of our African American brothers and sisters up here, to speak about an economy.
See, now he's mad, so they're going to let him talk.
Are exploited, where black women die 3 times at higher rates than white women, where we have a criminal justice system which is racist and broken, disproportionately made up of African Americans and Latinos and Native Americans who are in jail. So we need an economy that focuses on the needs of oppressed, exploited people, and that is the African American community.
Thank you, Senator.
But you want to kill them. You don't care about them.
Senator Klobuchar.
He doesn't care about minorities. None of them
People
do.
who identify as Hispanic, Black, Asian, or multiracial represent a majority of the population, outnumbering white residents. The United States is expected to be majority non-white within a generation. What do you say to white Americans who are uncomfortable with the idea of becoming a racial minority, even if you don't share their concerns?
I say this is America. You're looking at it. And we are not going to be able to succeed in the world if we do not invite everyone to be part of our economy. Our Constitution says that we strive for a more perfect union. Well, that's what we are doing right now. And to me, that means, one, that everyone can vote, and that includes our communities of color. This action that's been taken by this president and his people,
non-white people can vote in this country.
The country is wrong. They have made it harder for African Americans to vote, as one court said, discriminated with surgical precision. What would I do as one of the leaders on voting in the U.S. Senate? One, stop the purging. As Stacey Abrams
Black people
said,
can vote in
you
America.
Do not stop having your right to assemble if you don't go to a meeting for a year. Because you don't go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque for 3 months, you don't lose your right to worship. You shouldn't lose your right to vote. I would pass, as president, my bill to register every kid in this country when they turn 18 to vote. That would make all of these discriminatory actions.
I was able to vote when I was 18. This is a non-issue.
In addition to the agenda of economic opportunity. Because
I literally
as Martin Luther
voted
King
when I was
what good is it to integrate a lunch counter if you
when
can't
I
afford
first
a
became an
hamburger?
adult.
Thank you, Senator.
I mean, not for a president, but I voted
in the Middle East.
I mean,
Senator Sanders,
this is a
Secretary
non-issue.
of State Mike Pompeo recently declared that the United States believes Israeli settlements in the West Bank do not violate international law. That broke decades-long U.S. precedent.
Now we're on
How
Israel.
would you respond to Israeli expansion of settlements? Would you link that to foreign aid to Israel?
Israel has, and I say this as somebody who lived in Israel as a kid, proudly Jewish, Israel has the right not only to exist, but to exist in peace and security. But what U.S. foreign policy must
There's a
be
but.
about is not just being pro-Israel, we must be pro-Palestinian as well.
No, we don't. We do not need to be pro anything that stands against a country that's okay. We don't need to be pro Palestine and what they do over there. Palestinians, not all Palestinians, but Palestine has brutalized Israel. We don't need to be pro Palestine or any of those other countries that are trying to rain tyranny down on Israel. See, there's always a but when he says it. He says, oh, they have a right to exist, but no, we don't need to be pro-Palestine. No, because they hate Israel. That's not being pro-Israel. And it's funny how he says he's a, I'm a Jew, I'm a proud Jew. Now, see, I think of Ben Shapiro. Now, obviously, as a Christian, I disagree with his Judaism. But I mean, as someone who's supposed to be Jewish, take a lesson from Ben Shapiro. He's conservative because the Old Testament teaches conservative viewpoints. And he's actually pro-Israel, saying Israel has a right to exist, but we should also be pro-Palestine and let them do whatever they want. No. It's unbelievable. Okay.
And whether, in my view, we must understand that right now in Israel we have leadership under Netanyahu, who has recently, as you know, been indicted for bribery, who in my view is a racist. What we need is a level playing field in terms of the Middle East, which addresses the terrible crisis in Gaza, where 60 or 70% of the young people are unemployed. So what my foreign policy will be about is human rights, is democracy, is bringing people together in a peaceful way, trying to negotiate agreements, not endless wars with trillions of dollars of expenses.
Thank you, Senator. Buttigieg.
What we are seeing in the Middle East and around the world are the consequences of this president's failure, this president's refusal to lead. It's particularly disturbing in the case of Israel because he has infused domestic politics, making U.S. foreign policy choices.
It's Trump's fault that there are issues in Israel.
In Israeli domestic
of course.
Acting as though that somehow makes him pro-Israel.
I'm skipping ahead.
Wow.
This is boring.
He has stood with tyrants over free leaders. He does it all the time. And I have a little different take than some of my colleagues when it comes to what happened at that conference with NATO. Yeah, they were making fun of him, some of the foreign leaders.
We don't have to go to war, but we have to make it clear this is as far as you go, China. And in terms of their military buildup, it's real. But it would take them about 17 years to build up to where we are. We're not looking for a war, but we got to make clear we are Pacific power and we are not going to back away.
Mr. Yang and then Senator Klobuchar.
I have family in Hong Kong. I spent 4 months there and seeing what's happening on the streets, it's shocking. They banned face masks in Hong Kong. Why? Because they have AI technology that now is using facial recognition to identify protesters if they so much as do anything on the street, so they can follow up with them and detain them later. This is the rivalry that we have to win where China's concerned. They're in the process of leapfrogging us in AI because they have more data than we do, and their government is subsidizing it to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. I have sat with our leading technologists, and they say they cannot match the Chinese resources. China just produced its first major smartphone that does not have Google apps, and it is now trying to export its technology to the rest of the world. What we have to do is build an international coalition to set technology standards, and then
we're going to have to solve this problem. So the ability
you,
to say
Mr. Steyer.
it's off the table, we need a good relationship with them, and we're going to have to work with them going forward under all circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Vice President Biden, on China, we now know that China is engaged in an unprecedented military buildup. They have just launched a new aircraft carrier. There are new
this is
signs
boring.
of their disturbing espionage.
$100 a bottle wine. Think about who comes to that. He had promised that every fund
Ooh, wine. I like wine.
in America whose voices get heard. I believe he's talking about women and people of color and trans people and people whose voices just so often get shoved out. And for me, the best way to understand that is look at how people are running their campaigns in 2020.
People aren't really
I made the
trans.
decision when I decided to run not to do business as usual. And now
Sex is
I'm crowding in
biological.
on 100,000 selfies. That's 100,000 hugs and handshakes and stories. Stories from people who are struggling with student loan debt. Stories from people who can't pay their medical bills. Stories from people who can't find childcare. Now, most of the people on this stage run a traditional campaign. And that means going back and forth from coast to coast to rich people and people who can put up $5,000 or more in order to have a picture taken, in order to have a conversation, and in order maybe to be considered to be an ambassador.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
Those selfies, no, I want to finish this. Those selfies cost nobody anything. And I get it. In a democracy, we all have a lot of different points of view, and everybody gets one vote. But here's the thing. People who can put down $5,000 to have a picture taken don't have the same priorities as people who are struggling with student loan debt or are struggling to pay off medical debt. I'm running a campaign where people whose voices get heard. We can't have,
Thank you, Senator Warren.
We can't have people
Except for
who
babies.
can put down $5,000 for a check, drown out the voices of everyone else.
Thank you, Senator
They
Warren.
don't in my campaign, and they
Mayor
won't
Buttigieg.
in my White House.
Mayor Buttigieg, you had your hand raised.
I gotta say, I don't even think that these should be called debates. I mean, when everybody only has such a small amount of time to speak, and I don't know what that question was, I skipped, but this is a pretty boring debate. Nothing's really happened, and they're all just saying the same things that they've said in every other debate. Okay, so if I watch a debate, like if a big one in the science community, like Ken Ham versus Bill Nye, obviously I'm on team Ken Ham there. Or with Dr. James White and Jeff Durbin debating with atheists, you have cross-examinations, you have very long amounts of time to speak and make your case on certain issues, and single focused topics, and that's the topic of the debate. And you talk about that for like 2 hours, and you make opening statements, you have rebuttals, you have closing statements, you have Q&As, and all those different things. These debates are not debates. They're just Q&As where people are given like 30 seconds to answer. These aren't debates. A real debate is what I just described. You pick a topic, like, okay, here's a topic. Does climate change exist? Is climate change a threat? Let's talk about this for 2 hours. Go. A real debate. Is abortion murder? You have the side that says it isn't, you have the side that says it is, and you debate, you cross-examine each other, and then you do the Q&A after from the audience. And in this case, you're only having Q&A from judges, or questionnaires, moderators, or whatever. And people have like no time to speak at all, and they're not even debating each other. They're all just complaining about the same stupid things. No one's saying anything new. No one's debating. No one's being real smart here. I don't know why these are called debates. They're not debates.
Well, can't help but feel that might have been directed at me. And here's the thing. We're in the fight of our lives right now. Donald Trump and his allies have made it abundantly clear that they will stop at nothing, not even foreign interference, to hold on to power. They have already put together more than $300 million. This is our chance. This is our only chance to defeat Donald Trump. And we shouldn't try to do it with one hand tied behind our back. The way we're going to win is to bring everybody to our side in this fight. If that means that you're a grad student digging deep to go online to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in $10, that's great. And if you can drop $1,000 without blinking, that's great too. We need everybody's help in this fight. I'm not going to turn away anyone who wants to help us defeat Donald Trump. We need Democrats who've been with us all along, yes, but we also need independents worried about the direction of the country.
Okay, boring.
100 days. I would make it a top priority. I'm the son of immigrants myself. The fact is, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were started by an immigrant or children of immigrants. Immigrants make our country stronger and more dynamic. And immigrants are being scapegoated for issues they have absolutely nothing to do with. If you go to the factory in Michigan, it's not wall-to-wall immigrants, it's wall-to-wall robot arms and machines. We have to send the opposite message of this administration. And as your president, I think I could send a very clear message where if you're considering immigrating to this country, and I'm the president, you would realize my son or daughter can become president of the United States. That's the opposite of the current administration, and that's the message I would love to send to the world.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Sanders,
That was
a
loud.
related question to you. Actually, Senator Sanders, I have a new question for you. You can respond to Mr. Yang's comments as well.
I can't respond to the immigration question?
This is related, sir, but there are estimated to be as many as 12 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S., more than 2 million.
See, that's my point on why I don't think there's a debate. Because a topic is thrown out, and 2 people out of 7 are given like 30 seconds each to respond. You can't do a debate that way. It's not that any of them are saying anything of any kind of coherent significance anyway. But it's not a debate. It's impossible to debate this way.
And right here in California, if you have a chance to forge a bipartisan immigration reform plan, would you insist on a path to citizenship for all 12 million or just a segment of that population?
No, this is what I would do. Day one, executive order, restore the legal status of 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. Day one, we change border policy so that federal agents will never snatch babies from the arms of their mothers.
Oh, my PC is in battery saver mode. Ooh, I might end this soon. There's only like an hour left. I'm probably going to do some skipping, because this is boring and I don't want to finish the video. First thing, babies being snatched from their mothers. He's okay with mothers killing their babies, so he doesn't care about kids anyway. This hasn't only, the whole issue with kids at the border, this did not only happen under Trump. Trump did not put this into law. This happened under Obama. This is not a new thing. This has happened for a long time. And the only reason it's happening is not because of Trump. It's not because of conservatives. It's not because of anybody in D.C. It's only happening because when someone breaks the law and crosses the border illegally, they broke the law. They're going to be separated from their kids for some length of time, no matter what, because they're breaking the law. Okay? Legal immigration, great. If you're an American citizen, great, you should be able to vote. If you're not an American citizen, you don't get to vote. If you come here illegally, you should have to go back. It's that simple. That simple. I would also say, when it comes to immigration, Trump's wall idea, we do have the money for it. It's not too expensive. We have a several $1 trillion budget, and it's only some $1 billion. Don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but we do have the money for it. Steven Crowder has talked about it in his videos before, and has changed my mind videos actually when he talks about the wall. So I would recommend to go check that out. But having a wall is also not unbiblical. I mean, in the book of Nehemiah, Israel was to have a wall. Israel had a wall throughout the Old Testament. So having a wall for protection against anybody, there's nothing unbiblical about it. Yeah. So skip. Let's go to this.
Tuition free, and by taxing billionaires and by taxing Wall Street, we will cancel all student debt.
Okay, same stuff. Free stuff at our expense.
Levels. I agree with Senator Sanders. We have to reframe this argument completely. We have to go back to the idea that every American is worth being a full human being on every right. This is a racial argument by a racist president who's trying to divide us and who's vilifying people. It's absolutely wrong, and it's led him to break the laws of humanity in our name.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
Skip.
Tuition free, and by taxing billionaires and by taxing Wall Street.
Skip.
There's no one behind.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Amna?
Vice President Biden, let's turn now to Afghanistan. Confidential documents published last week by the Washington Post revealed that for years, senior U.S. officials misled the public about the war in Afghanistan.
Very personal for me because my household, my marriage exists.
You're not married.
By the basis of a single vote on that body. And yes, it is critical that we have justices who understand that American freedom includes reproductive rights and reproductive freedom, but that's not all. I expect an understanding that voting rights are human rights. I expect an
hold on.
Sure, as president, I will make sure that the people who want to bid on federal contracts are treating people with disabilities fairly.
Looks like we're getting into the abortion issue.
Fairly.
I've already talked about
go
that some.
At every part of what we do, because as a nation, this is truly a measure of who we are. We believe in treating these, the least of thy brethren, as people of value. And
okay.
President Obama with support by then Senator Kennedy. So I think it is very important when we look at these judges to acknowledge that there are some of these judges that you think are going to be okay, and they aren't. But what would I do as president? I would appoint judges that are in the vein of people like Elena Kagan and Justice Breyer and Sonia Sotomayor, and let's not forget the notorious RBG. That's what I would do. And if you look at my record as a lawyer and a member of the Judiciary Committee, look at the judges that I recommended to President Obama. People like Mimi Wright, who's a superstar, and Susan Richard Nelson. Look at who I put in as the first openly gay marshal in the history of the United States. I did that because I knew.
Gonna pause right there. Homosexuality is a sin. Goes against nature. Only a man and a woman can have sex. Okay? Putting it in a dude's butt if you're a dude, that's not sex. That's sodomy. Obviously, two women can't have sex because there's nothing to put in anywhere. Sorry to put it bluntly. Only a man and a woman can have sex. Only they can procreate. You can't do that any other way. So, nature. I mean, that's just natural. And biblically, homosexuality is a sin that, if not repented of, will end in hellfire. 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 10 and 11 says that, but it says that Jesus also saves people from homosexuality. Christ saves homosexuals too, but you can't stay homosexual and be a Christian. Buttigieg can't. Marriage is only between one man and one woman. That's the only definition of marriage there is. Marriage comes from a biblical worldview. Marriage, the idea of marriage comes straight out of the Bible. That's where we get it from. Not anywhere else. And it's one man and one woman. Otherwise, it's not marriage. It's easy.
Qualified people to take those jobs. And you need to do it not only with the right judges and have that know-how, but you also have to do it right away. That is one thing that we all learned from when President Obama
Man, this is boring.
was in, and that was that he was dealing with an economic crisis, and it was hard to do it right away. But we have to immediately start putting judges on the bench to fill vacancies so that we can reverse the horrific nature of these Trump judges.
A follow-up to Mayor Buttigieg. Beyond a pledge not to overturn Roe versus Wade, which I believe all of you have said would be part of your decision-making and choosing
of course it would. Because they care about people.
Are there other litmus tests that you would apply in choosing federal judges?
The Supreme Court is very personal for me because my household, my marriage exists by the grace of a single vote on that body. And yes,
the unconstitutional federal decision from the Supreme Court. Yeah. The Supreme Court constitutionally does not have the authority to make laws. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is the way that our republic is supposed to work. The way that our country is supposed to work is that the states have their own. They have their own autonomy. They're supposed to make decisions for themselves. The federal government doesn't make decisions for all 50 states. The states have their own power. On the abortion issue, it broke both of those constitutional boundaries, and so did this one back, I think, in 2015. It's not a marriage, Buttigieg, and the Supreme Court has no authority to do those things, so technically they're not even laws. So technically it's legal.
it is critical that we have justices who understand that American freedom includes reproductive rights and reproductive freedom, but that's not all. I expect an understanding that voting rights are human rights.
Okay. Voting rights. Okay, you have the right to vote in the country where you're a citizen. This is very easy. I don't have the right to vote in Germany. They don't have the right to vote here. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? I'm not a German citizen. I shouldn't vote in a German election. Okay? And vice versa. It's easy. If you're a citizen of a country, then you get to vote. Great. If you're not, you don't get to do that. And I would also say that reproductive rights, all that means is the right to kill your kids. I mean, okay, so Exodus 21, in the Old Testament, if someone hit a pregnant woman and that baby died, the person who hit the woman is put to death for murder of that child. That's what God thinks about abortion. Killing babies is wrong. It's murder. Everyone knows it's murder. It's just that plain and simple, and everybody knows it. Everybody on this stage knows it's wrong to kill babies and that no one has the right to do that. It's not a reproductive right. It's just plain murder. Everybody has the right to reproduce. You don't have the right to murder the offspring that resulted from that reproduction, or from having sex. It's not the same thing as birth control. Killing a baby is not the same thing as birth control. So, and that's what everybody on that stage is for. So, I'm going to skip a little bit.
I expect...
But I want to ask about...
Oh, people do have the right. You know, adults do have the right to have sex in this country. In that sense. So, like, two adults, even if they're not married, are not going to go to jail because they had sex with each other. So, people have that right anyway. So, if we're talking about the right to be promiscuous, or to fornicate, or to have sex, adults can already do that with no issue. I mean, that's obvious. But that's not the same thing as killing your kid. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Let's go.
About your decision making if you were elected commander-in-chief. You have pledged to withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan within your first year as president. But the Taliban...
Okay, I'm speeding it more.
Democratic governor of Kentucky that wants to build on Obamacare. And the way I look at it If you want to if you want to cross a river over some troubled waters, you build a bridge. You don't blow one up. And I think that we should build on the affordable.
It's about how we're going through the greatest economic transformation in our country's history, the fourth
Skip.
industrial revolution. It is grinding up our communities and
Okay, Skip.
You all have a great holiday season, and thank you guys for doing this as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm stopping there. My computer is low on battery, and I don't want to get the charger. And I think the abortion note is a good one to end on. Don't vote for these people. They're crooks. If you're a Christian especially, don't vote for these people. Everything they believe is unbiblical. Check out my other videos. Check out Apologia Studios, Jeff Durbin. Check out James White at Alpha and Omega Ministries on YouTube. Check out Steven Crowder on YouTube. Check out PragerU, their YouTube channel. Ben Shapiro, Andrew Clavin, and all of them at the Daily Wire on their YouTube channel and podcast. Everything that these people believe and stand for is unbiblical and wrong. Well, that's it for me. Please like, share, subscribe, and this was painful, and I'm glad I'm not watching the whole thing. It's the same crap over and over again. I plan to keep doing this as these debates go on. I think the next one is on January 14th, 2020. I'm going to watch that one as well and critique it. And soon, over the course of the next few days, I'm going to post a video on my channel about the history of Christmas and why Christmas is not evil or pagan, and that Christians have the freedom to celebrate it and enjoy it. So that's it for me. Peace.